Everything changed in a matter of seconds. Literally seconds. The moment the NFL schedule dropped, this stark, undeniable reality just completely set in for the Chicago Bears. Welcome to this NFL Nexus Explainer. I'm your host, and look, if you are a focused learner who absolutely loves diving deep into the microscopic, granular details of the gridiron, I'm talking defensive snap counts, short rest physiological metrics, the whole shebang, well, you are in the exact right place. Before we dive in, please do me a quick favor. Subscribe to the channel, like this explainer, and comment your thoughts down below. And hey, if you really want to take it a step further and support what we do, consider becoming a channel member. Okay, let's get into it. We are looking at an explosive, frankly cinematic breakdown of how the National Football League just handed the Chicago Bears the ultimate punishment, basically for their own success. Last year, it was a dream. But this year looks like an absolute nightmare, perfectly orchestrated by the schedule makers. You see, the margins in professional football are razor thin. Every single hour of rest, every yard of travel, every situational matchup, it all dictates who survives January and who goes home early. And the Bears? They are about to find out just how unforgiving those margins can actually be.
So, what happens when you finally win? I mean, really think about it. You spend years in this grueling rebuild. You stockpile draft picks, right? You endure these incredibly painful multi-loss seasons. You finally find your franchise quarterback. You claw your way to the very top of the mountain. In the NFL, you'd think maybe you get a victory lap. But no. The league doesn't reward breakouts, it tests them. It pushes them to their absolute breaking point. Last season, Caleb Williams authored a staggering 7 comeback victories after trailing in the fourth quarter. 7! He didn't just beat average teams either. He posted an otherworldly 118.4 passer rating in the final 15 minutes of games. He was orchestrating these surgical drives against legitimate playoff-caliber secondaries. He, along with head coach Ben Johnson, literally willed this team to an NFC North Division title and a wild-card playoff win over the rival Green Bay Packers. But the reward for all that grit? The reward for finally being good? Yeah, it isn't a parade. It's a massive target painted right on your back. It's a grueling test designed specifically to see if those fourth-quarter heroics were just some fluke or the actual foundation of a dynasty.
And that leads us to the cruel irony of the situation the Bears find themselves in right now. Honestly, Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams are entirely to blame for this, and I really do mean that as the highest possible compliment. They brought this franchise around so incredibly fast, and Williams was so undeniably spectacular at crunch time that they literally forced the league, the media, and every opposing defensive coordinator to pay attention. The Bears finally demanded respect. But, as we are about to see in excruciating detail throughout this explainer, the NFL made them pay a massive premium for it. They didn't reward them with some comfortable insulated schedule. No way. They laid a meticulously designed primetime trap. The Bears are going to be completely overexposed in 2026 simply because of their massive popularity and their undeniable success last year. And when you're overexposed, every single weakness, every missed assignment is magnifying under the absolute brightest lights imaginable.
Section 1. The hardest path forward, the price of respect.
Let's strip away all the emotion for a second, okay? Let's just look at the sheer statistical gravity of what the Bears are facing this season. Because the numbers, they just do not lie. Number 1, that is where the Chicago Bears sit right now. They officially have the number 1 hardest schedule in the entire NFL. This isn't just some pundit's opinion. It is based purely on the 2025 win-loss records of the actual teams they will play in 2026. And what's truly staggering here is the contrast from just one single year ago. Back in 2025, they entered the season tied for the second easiest schedule. They had breathing room, they had margin for error. But this year, they stand completely alone at the very peak of the mountain. Now, I know gambling and analytic websites might debate the exact decimal points of strength of schedule, but going from playing teams who finished dead last in their divisions to playing consecutive division champions, that is an incredible, unbelievable step up in weight class. We are talking about facing elite, top 5 defensive units week after week after week. Teams throwing exotic blitz packages at you, all-pro edge rushers pinning their ears back, shutdown corners locking up your receivers. There is absolutely nowhere to hide. To truly understand the historical weight of this gauntlet, we have to look at the precedent. ESPN's Dan Graziano pointed out this incredibly chilling statistic. Quote, "The last team to win a playoff game after entering the season with the hardest schedule by that metric was the 2016 Falcons." Unquote. I want you to really think about that for a second. We are talking about a full decade of NFL history completely stacked against this young roster. Over the past 10 seasons, 7 of the teams that held this unenviable number 1 spot ended up missing the playoffs entirely.
Let's look at the granular fate of some of those past teams to really get the picture. Take the 2022 Rams. Coming off a Super Bowl win, they faced this exact type of gauntlet. And what happened? They completely collapsed under the weight of accumulated injuries. By week 8, their offensive line was completely decimated. Or look at the 2019 Raiders. They simply ran out of gas. They lost 5 of their last 6 games because the physical toll of playing elite opponents consecutively just mounted up until they broke. The odds are fundamentally designed to drag you back down to mediocrity. History literally says that survival here is an anomaly. And when you look at the combined winning percentage of their 2026 opponents, it's a staggering .550. Let's focus on the smallest, most crucial details here, because that .550 number, it represents an absolute bloodbath. It isn't just a number on a spreadsheet. In reality, it means navigating the relentless, gap-penetrating defensive lines of Cleveland. It means trying to solve the incredibly complex, disguised coverages of the Baltimore secondary. And it means attempting to keep pace with the overwhelming offensive firepower of San Francisco, and having to do it back to back to back. It means that on average, practically every single team the Bears faced this year had a winning record last season. Think about what that does to a team physically. There are virtually no easy weeks, 0 get-right games. There are no soft spots on the schedule to rest your injured starters, or maybe hide a struggling offensive lineman for a week. Last year, Caleb Williams needed those magical fourth-quarter heroisms to win games against easier, fatigued opponents. But this year, if Chicago wants to make a second straight trip to the playoffs, Williams and the offense will need to be absolutely flawless over the first 3 quarters. Because these elite opponents, they simply will not leave the door open for late-game miracles. They will slam it shut.
Section 2, Primetime Overexposure Under the Lights. Now, the mathematical difficulty of the opponents is only half the battle. The other half, that is the sheer physical toll of becoming the National Football League's newest favorite television product. 7. The schedule makers, realizing they have an absolute goldmine in Caleb Williams, placed the Bears in a staggering 7 standalone primetime windows. And sure, while fans might view this as a massive sign of respect, and it is, the reality in the locker room and the training room is very, very different. 7 primetime games means wildly irregular schedules. It means playing a primetime game on the road, packing up the gear, and flying back to Chicago, literally landing on the tarmac at 3 or 4 in the morning. It means grueling, short rest turnarounds that completely, totally disrupt a player's physical recovery cycle. Think about the granular physiological toll for a moment. Professional athletes rely on strict 48-hour deep tissue recovery windows after the micro tears and blunt force trauma of an NFL game. When you play Thursday, then Monday, then a Saturday night, you systematically strip away those crucial hours of sleep and physical therapy. The human body is just not meant to be subjected to high-speed, car crash-level collisions on that kind of varying schedule. But that is exactly what the NFL is demanding of them.
When you actually map out the schedule day by day, it builds into an absolute nightmare scenario. Look at this relentless 3-week stretch. Week 7, they host the Patriots on Thursday Night Football on Prime. A brutal, incredibly short-rest physical game where sports science tells us soft tissue injuries always spike. Then they get a slightly longer break, right? But they have to use that extra time to fly across the entire country, crossing 2 time zones all the way to the Pacific Northwest to face the Seahawks. And they have to do it in one of the loudest, most hostile environments in all of sports on Monday Night Football and ESPN. Then, exhausted from the cross-country travel and the late-night physical exertion, they fly all the way back to the Midwest on a significantly shortened week to host the Buccaneers on Sunday Night Football on NBC. It is a back-to-back-to-back primetime gauntlet. The physiological exhaustion of playing under the lights against elite competition 3 weeks in a row cannot be overstated. I mean, by week 9, the lactic acid buildup and the sleep deprivation won't just be factors, they will be a very real, tangible opponent on the field. And the most crucial, genuinely punishing detail of this stretch is who they're actually playing. In that brutal window, the league is making the Bears play back-to-back night games against last year's 2 Super Bowl teams, hosting the Patriots in Week 7, then traveling to Seattle in Week 8. The NFL didn't just give them a mathematically hard schedule. They clustered the absolute hardest, most violent matchups into a condensed, high-pressure television window. You are asking a very young quarterback to outduel championship-caliber defensive minds on national television with millions watching, all while his offensive line is operating on severely compromised rest. It is an unbelievable test of Caleb Williams' maturity and head coach Ben Johnson's ability to keep this locker room physically and mentally glued together.
Section 3, a brutal holiday nightmare, hijacking the holidays.
As the weather turns cold, the schedule takes an even darker, more disruptive turn, completely upending the players' lives off the field. Trace this suffocating holiday timeline with me. In Week 12, they have to travel to Detroit for the traditional Thanksgiving Day game at noon on CBS, a notoriously short week that disrupts the whole family dynamic.
Then, in Week 15, they are stripped of their normal Sunday routine to play a Saturday night game in the freezing, bitter cold of Buffalo. Let's talk about the granular weather details there for a second. Average December temperatures in Buffalo hover in the mid-20s, but it's often coupled with that brutal lake-effect snow and high winds. That literally changes the entire physics of the passing game. The ball feels like a rock. And then, the ultimate disruption. Week 16, they host the Green Bay Packers on a Friday, Christmas Day, streaming globally on Netflix. As sports scientists and veteran analysts constantly note, it is incredibly taxing to make NFL players and their families absorb 2 major holiday games in a single month. The NFL's thirst for ratings has entirely hijacked whatever family time these men thought they had left, adding a massive layer of psychological fatigue right on top of the physical drain.
What makes this so staggering is the history. The Bears have played 38 times on Thanksgiving. They played on Christmas before in 2005 and 2011. But this is the very first time in the storied, century-long history of this franchise that they are being forced to play on both Thanksgiving and Christmas in a single season. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs survived this exact same holiday trap last year. But let's look at the granular context there. Mahomes is a seasoned veteran. He had already built a calloused, championship-level routine over years and years to physically handle that level of disruption. Asking a young Caleb Williams to navigate an unprecedented holiday gauntlet against 2 of their most bitter, hard-hitting division rivals, the Lions and the Packers, is a completely different and frankly massive hurdle. It is a psychological test just as much as a physical one.
Section 4, the NFC North bloodbath, the final month.
If Chicago somehow miraculously survives the primetime gauntlet and the holiday disruptions, they step right into the defining crucible of their entire season. You have to remember the context of the division they play in. Yes, the Bears won the NFC North last year, but they didn't coast, not even close. They won a division where literally every single other team, the Lions, the Packers, and the Vikings, finished with a winning record. This isn't just any division. It's an absolute powerhouse where survival is never, ever guaranteed. Let's dive into the granular X's and O's details of why this is a nightmare. You are facing the Lions, right? A team that uses heavy 12 personnel packages, 2 tight ends, to run the football right down your throat, absolutely exhausting your defensive tackles snap after snap. Then you face the Packers, who run a complex, motion-heavy passing attack that stresses the eye discipline of your linebackers and safeties on literally every single play. The Lions and Vikings are fully expected to bounce back to true contender status, and the Packers were a playoff team right alongside Chicago last year. In the NFC North, there are absolutely no days off.
And the schedule makers, in their infinite wisdom, decided to pack all that intense divisional hatred right into the very end of the season, right when the roster is going to be the most depleted. Look at this punishing final 4-game stretch. Week 15, on the road, Saturday night against the Buffalo Bills. Week 16, a short rest, Friday Christmas game against the Green Bay Packers. Week 17, hosting the Detroit Lions. And Week 18, closing the season on the road against the Minnesota Vikings. 3 straight divisional games to end the year, immediately preceded by a hyper-physical trip to Buffalo. By Week 18, the snap count accumulations and the inevitable injury attrition across the roster will be peaking. Starting linebackers will be heavily taped up, playing through sprained ankles. Wide receivers will be dealing with deep soft tissue fatigue. If the division title or a wildcard spot is on the line, the Bears will have to run through an absolute wall of top-tier opponents in freezing December and January conditions, relying on the absolute bottom of their depth chart to make season-defining plays.
Section 5, Surviving the Gauntlet, Finding the Silver Linings. Okay, despite the absolute darkness of this schedule, let's pivot slightly and look at the lifelines, the tiny little silver linings the NFL subtly threw the Chicago Bears. First, let's look at the team's mindset. On social media, they are outwardly totally unfazed. We all saw the viral schedule release video featuring star wide receiver Rome Odunze. Odunze, who, by the way, had a stellar rookie year with 44 receptions for 661 yards and 6 touchdowns, dressed up as the iconic painter Bob Ross, complete with the big wig and the paint palette, just calmly painting the schedule on a canvas. It's a hilarious, carefree juxtaposition. But framing Odunze's humor as a psychological defense mechanism against the brutal reality of the schedule is probably a bit more accurate, because the elite opponents they must paint on the field will require absolute, granular perfection. A single missed block or a blown coverage in Week 14 will be absolutely disastrous. Still, that loose, highly connected locker room culture that's been fostered under Ben Johnson, that is a massive, tangible weapon against the impending pressure. If they don't fracture internally under the stress, they actually have a fighting chance. And there are actual measurable, logistical blessings hidden in this schedule if you look closely enough. First off, their Week 10 bye is an absolute gift from the football gods. It is perfectly placed right after that brutal primetime stretch we talked about, and right before the massive Thanksgiving and Christmas holiday rush. That placement allows crucial, much-needed recovery time for those micro-injuries that plague players midseason. Second, they opened the season in Carolina against the Panthers. There were heavy rumors they would open on a Wednesday night in Seattle, but avoiding a hostile, deafening primetime road environment in Week 1 is absolutely huge for a young offense trying to find its early rhythm. Finally, despite early rumors of trip up to Madrid to face the Falcons, the Bears play 0 international games this year. Because of this, they will travel the third fewest air miles in the entire NFL this season. I mean, compare that to a team like the San Francisco 49ers or the Miami Dolphins, who routinely cross multiple time zones and rack up tens of thousands of air miles, completely throwing off their circadian rhythms. In fact, Chicago's trip to Seattle is the literally only time they will travel outside the Central and Eastern time zones all year long. That lack of deep jet lag, the ability to sleep in their own beds more often, that could seriously be the granular difference between life and death for their playoff hopes come January. So, after breaking all of this down, we are left with the ultimate question. Can Caleb Williams survive this gauntlet, or will the crushing, unprecedented weight of the hardest schedule in the National Football League break the Chicago Bears? The league has set the stage, the lights have never been brighter, the opponents are absolutely lethal, and the physical margin for error is exactly 0. We are about to find out exactly what this team is made of. Thank you so much for joining me for this NFL Nexus Explainer. If you found this granular, deep dive breakdown valuable, please hit that subscribe button, like this explainer, and definitely drop a comment below letting me know, do you believe Caleb Williams will survive this gauntlet? I want to hear your take. And to support these deep documentary-style dives, consider becoming a channel member today. Until next time, keep learning and keep watching the tape.